Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting on a hardwood floor, surrounded by 47 wooden pieces, holding a small metal tool called an Allen wrench. They are sweating. They are squinting at a diagram with no words, only a cartoon man holding a screwdriver. They paid $200 for a bookshelf. What arrived at their door was a flat cardboard box. And in that exact moment, they are participating in one of the most successful business tricks in modern history. A trick that built the largest furniture company on earth. 60 countries, 1 billion store visits per year, 1 in 7 humans on the planet. $42 billion of furniture annually. Its founder died in 2018 with a hidden fortune worth somewhere between $45 and $59 billion. He didn't build that empire by inventing better chairs or cheaper wood or a smarter factory. He built it by making one very simple decision in 1956. He decided you were going to do the work. Tonight, the greatest do-it-yourself-for-profit machine ever built. The man, the accident, the dark history he tried to bury. And the reason that every time you assemble a flat pack at home, you are quietly working a shift for one of the richest families in Europe. Let's begin. Southern Sweden, 1943. World War II is happening. The Swedish countryside is poor, cold, and very quiet. In a farmhouse called Elmteryd, near a village called Agunnaryd, a 17-year-old boy sits at his uncle's kitchen table. His name is Ingvar Kamprad. At 5 years old, he was buying matches in bulk and selling them, one by one, to his neighbors at a small profit. By 10, he had moved on to pens and women's nylon stockings. He was, essentially, born to be a salesman. At 17, his father gave him a small cash gift for doing well in school. Ingvar used it to register a tiny mail-order business. He took the initials of his own name, plus the family farm, plus the village. Ingvar, Kamprad, Elmteryd, Agunnaryd, IKEA. In its first years, IKEA sold everything that could fit in an envelope. Pens, wallets, frames, watches, stockings. A sleepy little catalog operation run by one man out of a barn. Then in 1948, almost by accident, Kamprad added a few pieces of simple furniture to the catalog. They outsold everything else immediately. By 1951, he had dropped the pens, dropped the stockings. IKEA was now, officially, a furniture company. And within a few years, Kamprad would discover the single most important thing about furniture that almost no other businessman on the planet had noticed. Furniture, it turns out, is mostly air. Meaning, when you ship a finished sofa across a country, you are not really shipping a sofa. You are shipping a giant box full of empty space, with some legs and some cushions floating in the middle. Most of what costs money to move, in trucks and warehouses, is not the wood. It is the air around the wood. In 1956, a young IKEA designer named Gillis Lundgren was photographing a small, leaf-shaped side table called the Love It. The shoot ended. He walked out to the parking lot, opened his car, lifted up the table, and it would not fit. He stood there in the cold Swedish afternoon, staring at the table and his car. And then, in what is probably the most expensive 5 minutes of intuition in retail history, he did something nobody, in furniture, had really done before. He took out a screwdriver and unscrewed the legs. The tabletop now lay flat. The legs went next to it. The whole thing slid easily into the trunk. But the next morning, Gillis Lundgren had one thought that would change the global retail industry forever. If I can take the legs off, so can the customer. He walked into Kamprad's office and pitched it. You don't ship the table, you ship the pieces, flat, in a thin cardboard box. You let the customer screw the legs on at home. Kamprad understood immediately. Flat boxes were cheaper to ship, cheaper to store, cheaper to handle. So much cheaper that IKEA could now sell that same table for, often, half the price of any competitor. The first flat-pack IKEA product hit the catalog in 1956. By 1965, Kamprad opened a giant warehouse store in Stockholm. Opening day brought 18,000 visitors, in a line that wrapped around the building. But flat-pack was not just a smart shipping trick. It was an entirely new business model. A model in which the company quietly shifts a huge piece of the work onto you. Let me show you, in the simplest way possible, what Kamprad actually discovered. Imagine you walk into a pizzeria. You order a pizza. The man hands you a small bag of flour, a can of tomato sauce, a block of cheese, and a piece of paper with a cartoon man rolling dough. He charges you full pizza price. You would be furious. You would walk out, leave a 1-star review, never come back. But that is, more or less, what IKEA does with furniture. They hand you the raw pieces. They hand you a wordless cartoon diagram. They charge you the full price of finished furniture. And instead of being furious, you love them for it. How is that possible? Comprod accidentally tapped into something deep in human psychology, something so powerful that, decades later, researchers at Harvard and Duke would give it a formal name. In a 2011 study, Michael Norton, Daniel Mochon, and Dan Ariely showed that when people assemble a piece of furniture themselves, they value it 2 to 3 times higher than its actual market price. Even if it is wobbly, even if it is ugly, even if a stranger would not pay $10 for it. They called it the IKEA Effect. When you put hours of your own time and effort into building something, your brain attaches part of your identity to it. It is no longer just a bookshelf. It is your bookshelf, the one you built, the one you suffered for. Honestly, the first time I assembled an IKEA bookshelf at university, I spent 3 hours arguing with that little wrench. When I finally finished, it wobbled like a drunk horse. But I sat on the floor and looked at it for 10 minutes, feeling strangely, deeply proud. I would not have sold it back for $200. That is the IKEA effect. And Comprod had stumbled onto it 30 years before any psychologist gave it a name. So this is the heart of the trick, in one clean sentence. IKEA does not sell furniture. It sells you a box of pieces, charges you the price of finished furniture, makes you the assembly worker for free, and then your own brain convinces you to love them for it. But the story of Ingvar Kamprad is not just cardboard boxes and Swedish meatballs. There is a part of his life that IKEA has spent decades trying very gently to forget. In 1942, when Kamprad was 16 years old, 1 year before he founded IKEA, he joined a pro-fascist movement in Sweden led by a man named Per Engdahl. During the same period, Kamprad also actively recruited members for a Swedish Nazi party. Not a passive sympathizer, an active recruiter during the exact years in which Nazi Germany was operating death camps just south of his border. For decades, almost nobody knew. Then in 1994, the personal letters of Per Engdahl were published after his death. The name Ingvar Kamprad appeared again and again. Kamprad responded with a public letter to all of his IKEA employees. He called his involvement the greatest mistake of my life. He cried in interviews. He said he was a young, lost, confused boy. The world on the whole was willing to give him grace. But then in 2010, the very old Kamprad was asked about Per Engdahl one more time. And what he said in that moment was that Per Engdahl was a great man, and I will maintain that as long as I live. Honestly, when I first read that quote, I had to put the article down for a minute. Because you can't really square it. Either it was the greatest mistake of your life, or the man was great. It cannot be both. Now here is the part that connects directly back to your wallet, because Kamprad had also built, in parallel, one of the most opaque corporate structures in modern Europe. The physical IKEA stores you walk into are owned by a foundation in the Netherlands called the Inca Foundation. That foundation is technically a charity, which means in many countries it does not pay tax. In 2006, The Economist estimated this single foundation was worth $36 billion, the wealthiest charity on earth at the time. But the IKEA brand itself, the name, the logo, the right to even call a store IKEA, is owned by a completely separate structure, one run through Luxembourg, and finally a small private foundation in Liechtenstein, controlled very quietly by Kamprad and his 3 sons. Every time you walk into an IKEA store, that store pays a royalty fee just for the right to use the IKEA name. Those fees flow up, through the Netherlands, through Luxembourg, and eventually into a private foundation in Liechtenstein controlled by one family. Independent journalists have estimated this structure helped Kamprad personally avoid somewhere between 2 and 3 billion euros in taxes over 20 years. So when you pay for your flat-pack bookshelf, a small piece of your money is paying a private dynasty hidden behind a charity in a country smaller than your city. Ingvar Kamprad died in January of 2018 at the age of 91. He had lived almost his entire adult life in tax exile. He flew economy class until the day he died. He drove a 20-year-old Volvo. He cut his own hair. He bought his clothes secondhand. He left behind an empire worth around $59 billion. Today, IKEA has more than 460 stores in over 60 countries. 1 in every 10 European children sleeps in an IKEA bed. Around 1 billion people visit an IKEA store in any given year. 1 in every 7 humans on the planet. Every single year, IKEA generates around $42 billion in revenue, more than the gross domestic product of countries like Iceland or Estonia or El Salvador. And every single dollar of that is built on top of one idea. One sentence that Ingvar Kamprad and Gillis Lundgren stumbled onto in a Swedish parking lot in 1956. If I can take the legs off, the customer can too. That one small piece of insight was worth somewhere north of $50 billion. Here is the part I think about more often than I probably should. Once your brain learns to recognize the Kamprad trick, you start to see it absolutely everywhere. You walk into a McDonald's today and you order at a touchscreen. You pour your own drink, and on the way out, you take your tray to the trash. You are working the back end of the restaurant, the job that 20 years ago was paid hourly to a teenager. You go to a supermarket, you scan your own groceries, you bag them yourself. You are the cashier. At the airport, you print your own boarding pass, you check in your own luggage. You are the check-in counter. You drive an Uber with your own car, your own fuel, and you call yourself a partner. You list your home on Airbnb, you clean it between guests. You are the front desk and the housekeeping. And online, you scroll through Instagram and TikTok, and you make the content. The platform sells your attention to advertisers for billions. Ingvar Kamprad was not the first person to figure out that the customer can be quietly turned into the employee. But he was the first person to industrialize it on a global scale with a smile and to charge full price for the privilege. So the next time you sit on the floor of your apartment at 11:30 at night, surrounded by 47 small bags of screws, pause for 1 second. You are not building a bookshelf. You are working an unpaid shift for one of the largest dynasties in modern European history. The reason it feels good when you finally finish is not because the furniture is good. It is because your own brain is helping the company hide the bill. If your head feels a little rewired right now, that means this video did its job. This channel is about exactly that. We dig into the quiet corners of how money actually moves, and we make them simple for anybody. If you want more stories like this one, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.